Hi guys, I'm going to talk to you briefly about shooting modes on cameras. Very important. Essentially what a shooting mode does is it controls how the camera selects the shutter speed and the aperture. And the way it does it in part is you start with this. You start with your mode dial over here. And again, yours might look a little bit different than the one I'm showing you, but they're essentially the same. So most cameras, when you get them, they usually start at auto, and you can probably figure out what auto means. It means that it's going to select everything for you. It's making all the choices. If I was a beginning photographer and I was handing this camera to someone who had never used a camera before and did not understand shutter speed and aperture, I would tell them to put it on auto. But we know better in this class. You know that there's a big difference between a shutter speed of, say, 1/15th of a second and a shutter speed of 1/500th of a second, and that this setting the camera does not know which one's better for the situation you're in. So we're going to change that. We're going to control the stuff. So the modes that I typically tell students to shoot in are P, S, A, and M. I can discuss these other modes with you later, and we can do this together as a group, but these also are other ways of controlling the camera. But typically, whenever I'm shooting, quite frankly, I've started shooting more and more with M, especially in my advanced photo classes and on my own. But if I'm teaching students how to shoot, I tell them to usually stick with P, S, and A. P means programmable. So let me show you what this means. So if I put the camera on P, okay, and I hit info right here. So first of all, I know what mode I'm in because it says P, so go figure. So if I change that to S, surprise, oops, no bulb in S mode, of course. Surprise, it's going to say, let me move it up. It's going to say S. Okay, so I'll put it back to P for a second. So voila, shutter speed, check it out, aperture or f-stop setting. Okay, and it even tells you how big your aperture is going to be. And if you hold this command dial right here, what a programmable mode does is the camera automatically chooses a shutter speed and aperture for you, but then you can kind of toggle it. So if you go to the left, your shutter speed is going to slow down. But look what happens with a slower shutter speed. That's a longer time, letting in more light. You can get away with a smaller aperture, and it's kind of nice because it shows you a little picture of what that's going to look like. Okay, and you can see I can turn to the left as much as I want. After it gets to this point, it's saying, you know what, I can't. The camera's like, I can't do it anymore. If I go to the right, you can see I can get all the way to the setting before the camera's like, that's it, because that is the biggest aperture available on this lens. Okay, so that's P or programmable, pretty useful. And that's the first one we're going to start with. S, which is shutter priority, means that you set the shutter and then the camera sets the aperture for you. So again, you use this command dial to change your settings. And if I go to the left, I'm going to slow down my shutter speed and my aperture adjusts accordingly. And the difference is that in programmable, you can't go any further. If I'm not careful, if I'm in S, you see how I can actually go to too slow or too fast of a shutter speed time. And then the high means I'm overexposing my image. So too much light's coming in. And conversely, if I go all the way to the right here, I can bring this all the way up to, let's see, 1/4000th of a second. And you can see that obviously well before 1/4000th of a second, this is saying low or underexposed, subject is too dark. And just to show you, if I take a picture of something, let's just snap it. That was nice and quick. But if I look at the image, I don't know about you, I can barely even see, there's hardly anything there. Whereas if I take a picture at a slower shutter speed time, let's say like 4 seconds. Okay, I'm going to just set the camera down for a second. Give it a moment. Okay, it's actually still taking the picture. This is a 4-second exposure. Oh, it's done. Okay. And there's my image. You can see it's way too overexposed. Okay, so that's P, that's S, and let's talk about A and M in the next video.